This segment of the Next Gen Patriots podcast is sponsored in support of the West Virginia Tobacco Quit Line. If you or someone you love is ready to quit tobacco, you're just one phone call away. Trained coaches are available to provide guidance, resources, and support every step of the way. Call 1-800-QUIT-NOW for free coaching, helpful resources, and encouragement to help you break free from tobacco. That's 1-800-QUIT-NOW to take the first step towards a healthier future. Mr. Puckett, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know it was short notice, but we greatly appreciate you for taking the time and coming on the show today with us. And it's a pleasure and honor to have you. So I definitely want this interview to be productive. So I have a few areas I want to kind of break down and talk to you about. So the kind of the audience kind of gets a good narrative behind you. Would you mind like sharing just some like what do you do day to day, like hobbies, interests, things that you like to enjoy?
That's a loaded question. It's a very loaded question. Let's see. Day-to-day activities vary. I'm executive director of a nonprofit in Mercer County, West Virginia. I'm also a county commissioner there for the last 11 years, in my 12th year now, going to a re-election campaign, and really just passionate about the work, passionate about the people. And then we have a mutual friend, Donald Reed, who, he's a passionate leader here in McDowell County, West Virginia. And, Donald and I have known each other a long time. And just a few minutes ago, we spoke, and he says, I thought I knew a lot about you. And he says, I know that you work and you're passionate about doing things in your community. And I said, that's the two things. Yeah. So I like to play basketball, like to swim, like to do a lot of fun things, picking up trash for fun. Ironic, weird hobby, and also painting and changing communities. So,
Nice.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but happy to tell all about it. It's a good time.
You're a busy man, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, so we kind of start where you first started your career. So did you go to college?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to Concord College back in the day.
Okay.
Concord University now, of course. Graduated there in 1993. I was actually an alum of Princeton Senior High School a few years earlier, and got a communication arts degree and really got involved in a lot of things on campus. And I think that helped set up a lot of the sort of where I was going to go as a career. I didn't know I was going to end up as a political figure in any way, but the main thing was, what can I do to benefit the community? And I had several different jobs. I came out of college actually as a director of communications for First Community Bank at the time. I was the largest bank in West Virginia at that moment, and setting up training programs for them. And then I worked for a nonprofit that was actually a federally funded nonprofit, the Robert C. Byrd Hardwood Technology Center there in Mercer County as well. And then I worked for a video game company for a hot minute until 2001, and I saw the opportunity to come back to work at home for an agency that I'm still with to this day, 25 years later, and changing lives. That's what we do.
Yeah. So everybody has an introduction. So I kind of want to go through this a little bit. So you started out as, you started working for the First Community Bank.
I did.
So what did that entail? What did you do?
Well, it was daily. I mean, it was one of those things where when I got out, I met the president of the bank. Because at that time it was located and headquartered there in Mercer County, and I'd met him at an event about 2 days prior. And of course, at the time I was painting houses, trying to make ends meet. And when I met him, he said, "Well, come in for an interview." I told him that I was kind of bold at the time. I told him, I said, I've got a resume in with your bank, thinking I was going to be a teller or something. I didn't know, but. He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I've got a communication degree." And I think he already had thoughts about what he wanted, which was a training program that was designed by the American Bankers Association. And at the time, it was a satellite training. And so you downloaded the clips of the training network that they had on a federal basis, national basis, and then we were able to take those and distribute them out through all of the branches and all of the things. I was a special events coordinator at the bank, a lot of the things. But yeah, for 2 years, it was an amazing training ground of, how you work in the corporate sector and see how the financial institutions really work from the inside.
Yeah.
And to do that training and to express that to all of the people, the constituents that are, within the bank, the shareholders, the real shareholders that are the people that are working there. It was a great opportunity. It gave me a lot of creative freedom. and really kind of set me up for things to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what year are we looking at here?
1993. 93 to 95. 95, then I went to work for that nonprofit. And
Okay.
that was unique. That was the Robert C. Byrd Hardwood Technology Center was built to increase the capacity of the secondary hardwood manufacturing industry. And that was really focusing on, moldings and kiln drying and a lot of the things that there weren't training education facilities to teach people that.
Okay.
And so the goal was to maybe train locals to that technology type process and to maybe build their capacity to then translate that into a working industry, in southern West Virginia. It was sort of flawed in its design. I mean, we weren't located in High Point, North Carolina. So a lot of the trainings and people came up from that area. So it was a travel thing. It tried to be a developmental sort of training facility. Eventually, it just kind of folded back into the USDA Forest Service. So I was kind of a Forest Service fed for a couple of years. But to this day, that facility still exists. It just not in its previous form. But again, it was a creative outlet because it allowed me a chance to be the marketing director there and focusing on how to build an industry and how to work with people in a different way. So, although I think it was flawed in its design, I think what we did was we transformed the industry in a way where we were a catalyst for other agencies to say, yeah, that'll work. Just it's not going to be in southern West Virginia. So,
Wow, that's actually really neat. I've never heard of anything like that.
There wasn't anything like it. It was a congressional earmark from Robert C. Byrd back in the day, which is hence the name. It since then had become the Wood Education and Resource Center, which was an independent entity of the Forest Service. So that in itself was the innovativeness that transformed sort of the technology in that industry. So it wasn't a failed project. It was just failed in design that we created something new, made it as good as it could before it went back into the Fed system.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so then you went on to as executive director for Community Connections.
I did, yes.
So walk us down through that a little bit.
Oh, let's see. When I first got hired, they had just gotten a drug-free communities grant, which at the time was through the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, and it was really focusing on juvenile justice. And there were a couple of initiatives that Community Connections had received this grant and they wanted to work on. One was going to be to increase the capacity of the local community coalition. And the other was to build a teen court program, the program that still to this day is very near and dear to my heart because it focuses on youth juvenile diversion from typical problems that they see in their lives. That was in November 5th of 2001. So you got to remember where we were as a country. I mean, 9/11 was a couple of months earlier, and when we left to go to this national training on what I was supposed to learn about, the drug-free community stuff, it was kind of a funny story. Naive. I hadn't been to D.C. in quite a while. I'd been there with the ABA thing from the bank. But we go into this place and, we're learning all about, prevention technologies and, what we should do to prevent drugs getting in the hands of kids and communities. And, of course, I'm green as can be. And there were a lot of stuff going on. And they were like, yeah, we get a lot coming at this conference. The president's coming. And I literally, before I could realize where I was like, oh, the president of what? Of the United States, right? So, yeah, you got to remember place at that time. But, there were a lot of security around, and President Bush had come in, and he signed an extension agreement to extend that out from 5-year program to a 10-year. And to be there at the signing that day, and then him hanging around with a lot of people who were in the room, and I had met some of the folks at the conference. We got a chance to meet the president, and, that was at the time, you got to remember, again, 9/11. So we're still in the throes where you have smoldering ash 2.5 hours north, and here the president's signing an agreement to make drug-free communities a priority. And I think for me that changed a lot of the perspective of what I saw, and that we each have an ability to become grounded in what we do in our own lives at the local level. But here's a guy who the country was in crisis. And he took time to come to sign an agreement to say that he wants drug-free communities because he knew that times were going to be harder than they were at that time, as bad as they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us that were in the room that day felt that passion, and we took it back home and we said, you know what, we can change our communities. And it's going to be hard work. 25 years later, it's still hard work.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty amazing thing.
Do you think that was probably one of the most ultimate drives that's led you to your success today?
I think there's several. I mean, I think you can look at times in your career where you look back and say, you know, that there were moments that were sort of those benchmarks. I think I've met every president since, which is kind of amazing, both out and in the White House, and had even met President Clinton at another event. Each one carries their own sort of systematic way of doing things, sometimes difficult, sometimes controversial, obviously. But I think there's ways where there's momentum, and as long as it's focused around a specific issue like substance use, and there's no deviance away from where we have to go. This is a prevailing problem. It is a chronic problem of communities all over the country, not just in Mercer County or wherever. And I think what it does is it reiterates the fact that when communities can come together in a specific way for a specific thing, that change can be made. And no matter what the rest of the world looks like, that's an amazing opportunity to make people better.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was a driver. Everything since has been a driver. People that I've met along the journey have been sort of the guiding principles of where the work goes. And sometimes we've faltered. Things happen.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is to keep pushing forward and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about a little bit before, but you're a Mercer County Commissioner.
Yeah.
So also that. So I want to focus on this too, because this seems to be a not really. People get really confused on this issue. So what is the role of a county commissioner? Let's establish that first.
Okay. So first of all, you don't have to be a specific. You don't have to give up your day job, so to speak, to be a county commissioner in West Virginia. It is technically, by technicality, deemed a part-time job. I can assure you that is far from the truth. Some people take it as a part-time job, but if you do it right, it is another full-time job. Most people don't understand the roles of what the county does. I mean, the county lives within a Dillon's rule state, sort of in democracy. The county only operates in which the government in the state capital in Charleston allows for it to happen, meaning we don't dictate policies that aren't in West Virginia code. There's things that exist there that the counties can do, but probably for generations have not done. We don't do roads and bridges. There is a Department of Highways for that. We can't diversify tax revenue. The state dictates what we can do. Typically, that's on the residents, the constituents. It's not a fair way of doing taxation in 2026, but it's the system that we have. We can do ordinances. We can do zoning ordinances. We can do litter control. We can do a lot of different things. One of the most successful things we've done in the last few years is our dilapidated structures ordinance, where we've torn down dilapidation, to build up. I always say, you can do a lot of building up in your community by tearing a lot of things down. Because when you see blight and dilapidation every day, your mental status adheres to that. We could see that on the roads on the way from Mercer to McDowell. Anytime you look at where the coal fields were and see what remains, you can see times that people have forgotten, facilities that have gotten forgotten. So one of the major things that counties can do is we can work towards fixing that dilapidation. Those are things that are available. But when it comes to certain things about diversification of tax revenue, we don't really have an option. Counties are stuck basically saying, the stuff that we have in our assessments of your property tax, that's how you're taxed in the county. And then people want to know, well, what are you doing with my tax dollars? Yeah. Well, I will tell you in Mercer County about we have a school levy that's voted on by the constituents. So 3/4 of our tax dollar goes to the school system. So what's remaining, the approximately, $10 million-ish in Mercer, $4 million of that goes to my law enforcement. $2.5 million goes to my jail bill, which is one of the most asinine things that we do, is to pay for that. Several reasons why we can get into that if you want. But then also our animal shelter. Three things are about 70% of my allocations for the tax revenue. 3 things. That means we have to operate a county on 30% of the remaining revenue.
Yeah.
That's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were to have, investment from corporations, things like that, that would give you more tax revenue. But, being in the coal fields and being in southern West Virginia, you typically have difficulties in which to do that. Difficulty recruiting, those other things. But we make do with what we have. We just kind of have to make the best of the soup that we're given.
Yeah.
So
So I want to go back so that everybody kind of understands what you do exactly at Community Connections and what it is.
Okay.
So kind of walk us through that.
Sure. So Community Connections is about a 35-year old agency. It started off from the Governor's Cabinet on Children and Families. It was formulated back in 1990. It really kind of started, but really formulated as a nonprofit in 92. So we're working on that the 5th year. Our goal is to strengthen communities, bar none. If you look at our mission, whatever that community looks like, it can be Mercer County specific. We've done a lot of amazing projects with Donald Reed, actually, here in McDowell County, working on some community-based issues. We have 8 family support centers throughout southern West Virginia. We work with community coalitions all over the state of West Virginia. And this last year, because of what we've been able to do, we've really focused on strengthening our communities where residents live. So I'll give you an example. For the last 12, 13 years in Mercer County, right on Mercer Street, downtown Princeton, when we went in there with our artistic partners, our people, our artisans, those the people that have lived there and create there, we looked at a community of dilapidation. No businesses wanted to be there. Prostitution was off the charts. 17 prostitutes on a quarter-mile stretch. We looked at police wouldn't even go down there. It was bad, and we said we want to take this area and make it somewhat of what we remember when we were kids and we were growing up there. And I think we did that by saying we want to start with facilities. We want to start cleaning them up. Painting the facades, putting murals on walls, and letting the art transform the community. Since that time, even this past year, Mercer County and Princeton specifically are known as the leading art communities in the state of West Virginia.
Wow.
We have transformed. Now we have businesses to where we have a parking problem downtown. We went from 8,000 cars a day to 14,000 cars a day. We have transformed this area of blight into something that's a thriving community where we have fairs and festivals now.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that it's the investment, but it's the physical, it's the mental, it's the financial investment that all culminates together to make change happen. And I think that's, in a sense, what Community Connections is trying to do as well. We look in communities across, in the communities that we serve. West Williamson, we want to do some painting projects there. We have worked with muralists in Nicholas County, Fayette County. One of the most amazing youth coalitions that exists is in Fayette County, West Virginia, and is transforming what that whole area looks like. And they've done it through the arts, and they've done it through that investment of the visual and perception of what goes on and how to strengthen a community. In a sense, it's a lot that goes in.
Yeah.
But that's about Community Connections. We do what the community needs, and we are a catalyst for change.
Yeah. So it makes sense why you'd be a county commissioner. But I kind of want to draw a correlation here. What have you taken from, I'm sorry, I forgot the name, from Community Connections? Yes.
Yeah.
What have you taken from Community Connections and drawn that correlation as being a county commissioner, and how you've been able to impact the county that way?
Well, I think it's not only just our county, but all counties. Thankfully, I'm on an organization. I've been on several national organizations and partners, but the one that's been most near and dear to my heart over the last decade has been the National Association of Counties. NACO, I've been happy to be on their board of directors, still currently am. I've led their Rural Action Caucus, which is the largest community caucus of its kind in the nation, as their chair. I've been co-chair and vice chair of arts, health and education, those kind of things. It's taking the expertise and things that I had at Community Connections from a lifelong sense of learning, and then developing that into stories that have transferred into not only what works in West Virginia, Mercer County, West Virginia, but also nationally, especially in rural environments. If you take some of those strategies and knowing that, and again, you got to put in the work. You have to be the person do the work. You can't just dictate that something get done. You got to be the one doing it. You got to be the one on the side of the road cleaning it up. You got to be paintbrush in your hand. I think that's kind of where the transfer has come from. This is the way I grew up. This is the community that I've seen, that I've loved, and the people that, are with me that, that trust, not all. Got to remember it's politics.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there that maybe not trust so much. But in a sense, look at you and say, you know what? For good or bad or delays in momentum or whatever, we're having an ability to make change. And I think that a nonprofit mentality of saying, look, I don't have to make money. I just don't want to lose money. And I can invest money that I get into things that have long-lasting impact.
Yeah.
That mentality that transfers into county government is really important. I hate it. I can't stand it when you go to meetings and commissioners and people of elected officials, they stand up and go, well, yeah, we want to run this county or run this state like a business. That's not what you want to do. It's not your money, number one. It's the money off of your taxpayers and people that are investing in the system. That's a nonprofit. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
If you run a county like a business, then you're trying to make money. For what? If you don't reinvest that money, if you don't put that money where it needs to be, it doesn't matter how much money you quote unquote make. So run a county or run a governmental entity like a nonprofit, because it's not your money. You take the money you have, you invest it the way you can, and hopefully you get good outcomes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, and obviously you've seen success from it. So
on both ways, yeah. And being an elected official, it has allowed, on the NACO stage, it's allowed me a chance to tell that platform. We've had people come to Mercer County and to Southern West Virginia from our national partners, people from all over the country. I mean, here's some irony for you. So a good friend of mine is Eileen Higgins, and Eileen is the first woman mayor, Democrat, to be elected in Miami in the last 40 years. Okay. Eileen was a county commissioner in Miami-Dade County. She came to Bluefield, West Virginia. She saw what they were doing in economic development. She took that same thing back to Miami-Dade County, and she modified it for the population that was there. And she implemented something that we have done in Mercer County in Miami. Wow. Now she's the mayor of Miami, and she's taking those same policies she learned on an economic mobility tour here and put it into play there. That just shows you technology can transfer anywhere.
Yeah.
It just has to have the right momentum to make it happen.
Yeah, and the right person. Yeah.
And the right person, correct.
Yeah. Wow. So I kind of want to keep moving on here. So I want to talk a little bit about drug crisis with you a little bit here. So do you think the drug crisis in America is now more driven by mental health, economic struggles, or lack of community? And how would we be addressing these root causes?
All of the above. I don't want to pigeonhole it into one. I think it's a conglomeration of all. I think you can look at my friend Evan Jenkins, who was a congressional rep from the 3rd District at the time, served on our Supreme Court and so on. Evan used to say that a good job can solve a lot of social ills. Good economics can solve social ills. Likewise, social ills can kill a lot of economics. It's a double-edged sword. So if you've got places of dilapidation, lack of employment, lack of physical health, mental health, then the odds of you getting jobs are going to be slim. But counterintuitive to that is if you get an opportunity for investment of a good job, socially, everything kind of comes to the top. The trick is to do that in a way where you've got sort of the capacity for good quality health care. Something that, we're all concerned about. You've got to have the health care, because if you don't have good, strong health care and preventative care and understanding of the wellness system in your own mind, then typically the economics will follow that. You can go to metropolitan areas, within Southern West Virginia, probably an hour and a half out. The social ills are not as bad as they are here. A lot of that's economics. A lot of that's, lack of jobs, lack of education, lack of opportunities. It's a mix. But I do think that when you have that investment, you get corporations that say, Southern West Virginia is open for business. It's an opportunity because you've got people that are still hardworking, resilient, want to work, dedicated to a craft, If it's not the mines, then it's timber. If it's not timber, then it's tourism. If it's whatever it is, you got to be dedicated to that. And you've got to have a passion for community, which I think we still have in Southern West Virginia. If we can overcome some of the mental health issues, the mental struggles, and put that money that's the opioid settlement money back into good use by increasing the opportunity of our infrastructure, I think we've got a chance to turn a lot of the things that we've seen around. But we've got to invest it the right way. If all we're doing is paying the jail bill, and which is astronomical, as I mentioned earlier, then we're not doing any good to our constituents.
Yeah.
We've got to invest that money the right way. We've got to put money into social services, money into economics, money into economic development. That's the way. It's that long-term systemic change through investment. You can't cut yourself out. You got to invest in it and build yourself out.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the opioid crisis a little bit with you real quick here. So as a state and national level, you hear about the opioid crisis, and there's a little bit of confusion on a state level where we're at. I think people don't realize that we're in a recovery stage.
We are.
And so what level are we at when it comes to not just state, as I just said, but as a national level?
Well, I think we're in a state of flux. I mean, corporate greed rules the crisis by far. I mean, if you take the settlement dollars from McKesson, Cardinal, Purdue, all of those different ones, you wrap them all up about the money that they've given back to communities to help offset the detriment of the lies that came on the backs of people that have passed, unfortunately. They've already recouped their money. They've already made more money. They're still selling products. They're selling more products overseas. They're not losing money. They could invest 15, 20 times what they're putting in. That's where we need to be. We've got some settlement dollars. We have a 45% overdose less rate of what we had just a few short years ago. So that's a good thing. But we're giving out tons of Narcan, and we're really developing quick response teams and assisted diversion programs. So I think in the mental health capacity, we're doing a good job at that. Where I think we may be failing and could be doing better, and through NACO, actually, I was blessed to be on the National Opioid Task Force. And one of the things I think as a country that we are failing on is the lack of continual investment in prevention-based systems. We are not investing enough money into the preventative aspect of what we can do to make our community stronger. In West Virginia, we do not have a prevention-based system. We have prevention groups like myself and through Community Connections, but it's basically grants that come from the feds and it's passed through the state. West Virginia does not invest any money in the prevention system. And one of the major problems that we have with that is the fact that we have no long-term sustainability of dealing with prevention from an employment perspective. To give you an example. So in McDowell County, the Faces Coalition, and Ginger does a great job, working with a lot of the groups here locally. If it wasn't for grants, the Drug-Free Communities money, other grants through the state, there would not be a prevention-based system here. And one of the major factors is if the grants go away, so do the positions. All the training, the education, the quality of the person that you've hired for that job is always contingent on a grant. If there's no long-term sustainability like you would have with a mental health facility or a DHHR or something, DHHS, if you don't have a job that is secure, that the position is there, then you spend a lot of time training somebody, educating them, only to lose the grant, to put them back out to go somewhere else. Then if you get another grant, great. Then you got to go through that process again. The problem we have in the country is that there's no long-term sustainability workforce to make the problems better. You can train all the great people, and that's great. But the people that have trained over the last 20 years that have been hanging on to these grants, we are going to retire. And there is not a backup system of a job that's set aside that's not grant-based in our state.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we could be failing. And that's where I see, potentially another crisis happening because you're going to bring in a lot of people that have grown up not knowing the history of where we've been. And without knowing that history and seeing that the progress happens, you can regress really fast. Yeah. Because you're going to lose that institutional knowledge moving forward. Yeah. So, we're getting better. Our coordination's better. but we're failing because we don't have that long-term healthcare system for substance use.
Yeah. So as we start to wrap this up here, I have two follow-up questions for
Sure.
you, and we're kind of changing the topic here. But what would you really truly define success as? That's a deep question.
Ooh, that's like in general, like it.
Yeah,
Not one
your
thing, but
thoughts.
success.
Your thoughts. Well,
I think that's a very ambiguous question. This is why I didn't ask you to give me those up front. I think success is looking at something and saying, okay, no matter what it is, have you had an impact not only in your personal life, has it changed you, has it modified your behavior, but how you translate that to others, and has it done the same? Has anything you have done as an individual been able to change somebody's life, modify their behavior? Because if your behavior changes, so does everything else.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
culturally, all those pieces. You know, have we in West Virginia with the substance use issue? I'm going to take that as an example. For the last 20 years, I've seen us lose the cultural fabric of who we are as Appalachian people. You know, we used to be the mothers, grandmothers on the front porch, watching down the street, you know, seeing somebody come. If they did something wrong, the hotline was to your mom or whomever. And over the last 20 years, we've seen that redefined as, that's not my problem. That's so-and-so's problem. I wouldn't call their mom because their mom's probably going to be incarcerated or gone or something. And I'm saying that facetiously, but it's a lot of times it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you been able to consistently say, I've changed a life, I've changed a community, and therefore I've changed the trajectory of what has happened after that, right? The after effects.
Yeah.
I think success is ranked as that. I think we've had a lot of success. I think we've done a lot of things by working with our kids, working with programs, working in communities to make them stronger. I've certainly seen physical change when it comes to downtown Princeton and other communities we've touched. That's brought economics, that's brought opportunities. That's a success to me, is when you can physically see how you've changed your own behavior and your way of thinking about it, and then how that has actually changed the lives of others.
Yeah.
So again, it's an ambiguous answer to an ambiguous question.
That was a good question. I mean, good question. That was a good answer.
Good,
though.
yeah, it was a
That's
good
what I was meaning. All right. So one last question here. So, and this is more steered towards youth. So what opportunities are out there right now that young people might be overlooking?
That they can actually be the change in the communities and they don't have to go somewhere else to find it. They can, even on scale level, if you want something to be better, you have to understand that it's your responsibility to make it happen.
Yeah.
You can't wait on other people. You can't, and I say this to my own kids who are now somewhat grown, 23, graduated, 19, still in college. If you want something, you've got to go get it. And you can't wait on somebody else. You can't put that job opportunity in and, submit it out on Indeed and think that somebody's just going to call you back.
Yeah.
Or they're just going to give you a, hey, thanks for replying. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't live in that world anymore. You've got to be able to get on the phone. You got to be able to say, I want it. And I think for me, I think that's what I'd like to see more of in our communities is that aggressiveness of saying, if I'm a young person, I can't just go to a point and go, oh, that didn't happen. They didn't get back with me. They didn't. No, they're not going to.
Yeah.
Because I think in times past, we would go knock on doors. We would, make a phone call. We would do those things. Technology has made it so conveniently inconvenient to say no or not even have a dialogue with people anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very harsh reality for our young people.
Yeah.
But get aggressive and go get it and make the change that you want to see. I see it all the time. I see kids wanting to make a difference, but then they get roadblocked and then they end up, moving off somewhere else where it became easier. The road to success isn't easy. It's hard. And I think you've got to be willing to have the energy and the strength and the knowledge and the wherewithal to go get it yourself, because it's not kind of come easy.
Yeah. So, alrighty. So the time has run out, but as we wrap it up, I want to say thank you so much on such a short notice for coming on here and having to take the time to talk with us. And it's been an honor and pleasure to have you. Wow. Keep up the great work, especially in Mercer County. And if you guys know him, he has done quite a bit in Mercer County. So where can we find you guys on social media as far as like your community?
Yeah, for Community Connections, it's usually Community Connections WV. We usually tag everything with the WV on the end. Of course, with Mercer County, it's also Mercer County WV. There's a lot of great stuff that's happening, and I think that's happening all over West Virginia. Partnerships with McDowell County, Wyoming County, all of Southern West Virginia. We work together, and I think that's the thing that strengthens us all, is when we actually have the opportunity to work together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as always, we'll see you guys in the next one.